Morning, everybody. Nice to be back. Feeling a little bit better today. So we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday with Greece, on ancient Greece still. We're getting a little bit closer to the edge, probably about a day or two left. Maybe the end of this week we'll get done with Greece. Next week we'll start with Rome. Rome, my favorite place. My favorite place to be was Rome ever. So I'm excited to do that one. Sorry, the computer's on my lap, so it's a little bit rocky. Anyways, with no further ado, let's get started. We'll start with a bit of review and then move forward, talking about Homer's art, the Iliad, and such plays he's wrote, poems, I should say, actually. So, slideshow. All right, so this is the slide I left you all off on yesterday, with a few gifts of the Greeks, physics, and several inventions were invented by Archimedes. He also invented the concept of pi, 3.1495, blah, 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 blah. Geometry, Pythagoras, the Pythagorean theorem, which is something you'll work with when you're in geography, or oh God, not geography. Geometry. There we go. I don't know why that was so hard for me to think of. And then medicine, the Hippocratic Oath. Hippocrates, every doctor today has to take the Hippocratic Oath. The symbol for doctors is this symbol that comes from Greece. Architecture, Greek columns. These types of columns you will see all over the United States and Rome as well. They're very good at making sculptures. They really glorified the human body and made the human body the holy thing. Trial by jury, the roots of democracy. You guys know all about that from the reading about Pericles. And the Olympics, and then some literature, some books, Aesop fables. Hercules comes from Aesop's fables. We got the creation of comedies, tragedy, and satire by these fellows here. Sophocles, Aristophanes, whatever. The epic is Homer's The Odyssey and the Iliad, which is an extremely important story for human history. It has had a major effect on many major cultures. Then we got Herodotus, the father of history, and Sappho poetry. Sappho was a famous bisexual who the church really kind of lied about Sappho's bisexual origins and tried to hide it. So Sappho is an important figure in LGBT history. That's just Medusa's head cut off, some more stuff, Hercules from the movie. We'll get into that stuff later. I don't know why I added so many pictures. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle are going to be your most important philosophers. By the end of this Greek thing, if you guys remember anything, just remember Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Those are the three most important people to come out of Greek if you're a philosopher. So we're going to talk about Homer. Homer was a man who lived in ancient Greece. He wrote in the Greek Dark Age, which would have been after the fall of the Mycenaean Empire. We don't know why, but this big Greek empire collapsed and all of Greece fell into those city-states. Nobody knows why. If you can ever figure that out, you'll become very famous. And historians are always working towards it. So Homer, why is he famous? Why is he the greatest poet of all Greeks? Poet, I meant to say. Well, he wrote the Iliad, which was about the Trojan War. So if you've ever seen the movie Troy, that comes out of the Iliad. The concept of a Trojan horse comes from the Iliad. Achilles, one of the most important heroes in Greece, was made up by, or spoken about. And nobody knows if the Trojan War was real. Nobody knows if Troy was real. It's it lies right on the edge of myth and history. So we're writing about the Spartan king Agamemnon. That's what Homer was doing. Agamemnon had just made peace between the Greeks and the Trojans, but then his wife was stolen by the pretty little Prince Paris, who the city of Paris is named after. We got this guy right here, and then that's Helen of Troy. They run off together, and then Agamemnon sends all the Greeks to go destroy Troy and bring his wife back home. So Homer gave the Greeks an ideal past with a cast of heroes. Achilles, Odysseus, all these important people. So the Iliad here is the main characters: the noble Achilles, the arrogant Agamemnon, the traitorous Paris, Achilles. My goodness, they got Odysseus in here, Helen, and Priam, but they don't have Hector of Troy, which is ridiculous. Hector's the one who fights Achilles. So anyways, as you can see, there's been comics about it, books written about it. You can actually get the original the Iliad itself. Whoopsies. Okay, good. The Iliad in film was been remade a ton of times. So you can see that in the 50s and 60s, they really had quite the appetite for Troy. We got Helen of Troy, Helena de Troia, and then we did the movie Troy, which was a very epic movie in the early 2000s when I was in high school. Big movie. The Trojan horse or rabbit. You've ever seen the Trojan horse is a concept in Greece. I should explain this to you guys before I just keep moving forward. Or in the Trojan War, I should say, where the Greeks couldn't beat the Trojans. They couldn't get inside the city. So they pretended like they fled, and they left behind a big wooden horse as an offering to the gods. So the Trojans would think that the horse was an offering to the gods, and they would assume the Egyptians or the Greeks had fled. Well, the Greeks didn't flee. They actually just went around and hid, and there was some Greeks hiding inside of the horse. And when the Trojans let the horse inside the city, at nighttime, the Greeks fell out the horse, and then they killed the guards in the gate, opened the gates, and the Greeks flood in and take Troy. If you've ever seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail, they try the idea, but they create a Trojan rabbit. And when they leave the rabbit there, they forgot to put any people inside of it, so their plan doesn't work. Oops. That was an intense animation. Okay, so the Greek epic poems, Homer also wrote the Odyssey. The Odyssey is focused on a man named Odysseus, who is also a character in the Iliad. So Odysseus goes on a great adventure, which we now call an Odyssey. And that's why he's trying to return home after the Trojan War, but the gods keep messing with him and screwing up his way home, and it takes him years to get home instead of months. In the ancient days, traveling across the Mediterranean was very dangerous because of how the storms and the low quality of their ships. So men were often getting marooned on islands and losing track of where they were going, and sometimes trips would take years instead of months. So there is still debate as to whether or not Homer really did write both the Iliad and the Odyssey, and when exactly he lived, if he even existed, all that kind of stuff. Once you get this far back in history, it's really hard to really prove much unless you have bones or tombs, because otherwise you're just relying on people's hearsay. So the Odyssey has also had many important things written about it, books, movies. The Romans call Odysseus Ulysses. If you've ever heard of Ulysses S. Grant, probably the greatest president to ever run the United States of America. He was named after Odysseus. So here's just some more stuff. This is from ancient Greece. A lot of times they would depict their art on pottery. So here's the sirens going after the sailors. Here's another, a more contemporary. This was painted in the Renaissance era when people were starting to look more realistic in European paintings. And then here's a Lego recreation of Homer's Odyssey with the sirens, and then Odysseus up here. He looks like he's having a great time. And I don't know if any of you kids have read this stuff. It's not super recent anymore, I guess, but these kind of Perry books, they're all, children's books based on Greek mythology. The golden age of Greece is philosophy. Big three in philosophy will help lay the foundation for Western philosophy and science. So there's Eastern philosophy, which has nothing to do with the Greeks, like Chinese philosophy or Islamic philosophy. He's the first one. He develops the Socratic method, which if we were in class, I would be using the Socratic method to teach. It is probably the oldest form of teaching, and I think efficient. And Socrates says the unexamined life is not worth living. So if you don't think about your life and what you do and the actions of your life, there's no point to live your life. So second one, we've got Plato coming. Plato is a student of Socrates, and he goes on to grow the idea of philosophy education, and he creates the first university in the West. And he wrote a book called The Republic, which is about Athens. All that stuff. So Plato was really important. After Plato comes Aristotle. He was a student of Plato. So 3 in a row. Aristotle in is the basis for the modern scientific method. And Aristotle was the teacher of a man named Alexander the Great, who went to become great. We will not be watching the villain heads. So Plato would have been number 2 in this list. He was also a writer. He told a story about a city called Atlantis, and that is where Aquaman comes from. The movie Atlantis. Excuse me. A lot of people think Atlantis is like gold or hidden magic buried there, and it's some kind of city collapsed in a earthquake or something like that. And so they are often all right, and we're going to end there, and we'll pick up tomorrow at Alexander the Great and the creation of Hellenism, and then it looks like we're getting right there at the bottom. We'll probably finish this tomorrow. So I'll get those notes. Thanks for watching, and you all have a great day.